The biggest mistake people make when zombies take over happens in the first 5 seconds. They run toward the places they think are safe. And that instinct, so natural, so automatic, is exactly what gets them killed. When the outbreak hits, you don't rise into panic. You drop into habit. Your brain pushes you toward hospitals, police stations, big stores, crowded roads, places built for order, not collapse. You don't question it. You just move. That's the trap. You step outside and the world is already unraveling. Sirens blur together like a dying heartbeat. Smoke drifts above rooftops in slow, crooked spirals. Somewhere down the street, someone screams, and the sound doesn't fade. It multiplies. You feel the shift before you understand it. The city is no longer a system. It's a maze. And the places you trust the most have already turned against you. Your bag is barely packed, your thoughts barely formed, but every instinct you rely on is pushing you in the wrong direction. You think about going where there's help, where there's authority, where there's supplies. But those places aren't lifelines anymore. They're magnets, pulling in the injured, the desperate, the loud, and the infected. In these first moments, your survival is decided not by where you run, but by where you don't. Because in a zombie takeover, the dead aren't your first enemy. Your own assumptions are. And if you don't break them now, you won't live long enough to face anything else. You think of hospitals as the heart of survival. Bright lights, trained staff, stocked supplies. But in a zombie outbreak, a hospital becomes the first place you must avoid, because it collapses faster than any other structure in the city. And it doesn't collapse from the outside. It collapses from the inside. Picture the moment the infection begins spreading. The injured rush in. Families drag in the screaming, the bitten, the unconscious. Hallways flood with panic long before you ever see a zombie. Every room fills with blood, noise, and fear, three things that draw the infected like a magnet. You walk through those sliding doors, and suddenly you're surrounded by hundreds of people who are one scratch, one cough, 1 minute away from turning. The doctors and nurses fight to maintain order, but their world relies on routine and precision. When the system breaks, the people inside break with it. Equipment gets knocked over. Stretchers jam the corridors. The power flickers. Alarms blare non-stop. And in the middle of that chaos, the infection doesn't spread linearly. It erupts. One patient turns, then another. Then the entire emergency wing falls like dominoes. The worst part is that hospitals are built like labyrinths. Narrow hallways, locked doors, limited exits. If the horde reaches one end of the building, you have almost no chance of reaching the other. You don't get heroic battles in hospitals. You get choke points. You get blind corners. You get death. By the time you arrive, the building is no longer a sanctuary. It's a pressure cooker. More bodies than space. More screams than strategy. And once the infected break through the first barrier, everyone inside becomes trapped. You walk into a hospital seeking life, but in a zombie takeover, it's the place most people walk into for the last time. You might think the police station is your safest bet, the place with trained officers, stocked weapons, radios, armored vehicles. But when zombies take over, a police station doesn't become a fortress. It becomes a battlefield that's already lost before you get there. And the most dangerous part? It's not zombies waiting inside. It's people. In the first hours of the outbreak, every terrified civilian with a half-formed plan runs straight to the station. They want guns. They want protection. They want someone to tell them what to do. By the time you arrive, the lobby is overflowing with shouting, bleeding, panicking survivors, all clawing for help that doesn't exist anymore. Officers aren't organizing evacuations. They're drowning in chaos. And while the crowd outside is losing control, the officers inside face an even deadlier problem. The infection always reaches law enforcement early. Patrol units are the first responders. They're the first to get bitten, the first to return without realizing what they're carrying. One wounded officer limps into the station, and the entire place turns into a death trap within minutes. Police stations aren't designed for escape. They're designed to keep people in. Heavy doors, metal bars, locked corridors. The same features that once protected the city now trap everyone inside with the infected. The armory becomes a choke point. The holding cells become feeding grounds. Gunfire echoes through narrow hallways, drawing more infected from outside. And that fantasy you had of grabbing a weapon and fighting your way out? Gone. By the time you reach a police station, every gun is already claimed, every exit is already blocked, and every officer is already overwhelmed. You don't find order there. You find desperation, confusion, screams bouncing off concrete walls, and once the outbreak reaches the station, the line between authority and prey disappears in seconds. In a zombie takeover, the police station isn't a stronghold. It's the first place the living lose control. When the world collapses, your instincts push you toward one place above all others: the grocery store. Food, water, tools, medicine, everything you think you need sits neatly on those shelves. And that illusion of abundance is exactly why supermarkets become one of the deadliest traps in a zombie takeover. Because you're not the only one running there. Everyone is. The moment the outbreak hits, panic drives crowds through the sliding doors faster than any plan or strategy ever could. Carts slam into each other. People shout, shelves rattle. A single bottle drops and shatters, and the sound echoes through the entire building like a flare fired straight into the sky. And zombies respond to sound long before they respond to sight. Supermarkets are wide, brightly lit, and filled with aisles that become perfect ambush corridors. One panic turn into the wrong row and you're face to face with a confused customer who just turned 30 seconds ago. You can't hear them over the noise. You can't see them around the corners. And by the time you realize what's happening, the exits behind you have already filled with people fighting over supplies or trying to break back out. People don't think straight when they're hungry or scared. They trample. They claw. They grab at anything that looks like survival. And in that frenzy, it only takes one infected person, one bite hidden in the chaos, to create a chain reaction. An entire store can fall in under a minute. Worse yet, supermarkets are built with massive glass fronts. Once a horde gathers outside, those windows become nothing more than fragile, glittering lies. One crack, one push, one body thrown against them, and the entire wall collapses. Suddenly the store transforms from a supply center into a sealed tomb filled with panicked survivors and incoming dead. If you walk into a supermarket during a zombie takeover, you aren't walking towards supplies. You're walking into a cage that hundreds of desperate strangers are already shaking from the inside. And once the horde hears the chaos, the doors you came through become the first thing to break. Highways are supposed to represent freedom, long stretches of open road, fast travel, clear escape routes. But when zombies take over, highways transform into the most predictable, most devastating trap you could possibly step into. And the cruel part is this: you won't see the danger until you're already locked inside it. The moment the outbreak begins, every survivor with a car tries to flee the city at once. Panic doesn't guide them toward strategy. It guides them toward the nearest exit ramp. Within minutes, the roads jam with vehicles packed so tightly you can't open a door without hitting another mirror. Engines stall, horns blare, people abandon their cars to run on foot. Everything that once flowed turns solid. You're trapped in a metal box surrounded by hundreds of panicked strangers, each one a potential carrier, each one making noise, each one attracting the dead from miles away. Highways create bottlenecks, and bottlenecks create feeding zones. Once a single infected person appears between the cars, there's nowhere to move. You can't accelerate. You can't reverse. You can't even turn your body without hitting another survivor. Worse, zombies don't need speed on highways. They only need presence. They weave through the gridlocked cars effortlessly while you struggle over seats, seat belts, and shattered glass. Every honk, every scream, every slammed door becomes a beacon glowing in the open air, drawing more infected down the asphalt like ants following a trail. And visibility betrays you too. You might think being outdoors gives you a better view of approaching danger, but rows of cars create blind angles everywhere. A zombie could be 3 steps away, crawling under a truck or slipping between bumpers, and you wouldn't see it until it's already grabbing your leg. By the time you realize the highway isn't an escape route, it's a cage stretched for miles. You're already too far in. And once the horde reaches both ends of the traffic jam, the entire road becomes one single, continuous kill zone, with no breaks, no cover, and no second chances. Airports and train stations are designed to move thousands of people quickly. But when zombies take over, that same efficiency becomes a weapon pointed directly at anyone who walks inside. These places don't become evacuation points, they become pressure cookers, packed with fear, noise, and bodies that have nowhere to go once the system breaks. The moment the outbreak hits, every desperate person with a passport, a ticket, or even just the hope of escape runs straight toward the nearest terminal or platform. You step through the doors and instantly feel the air change. Not because of zombies, yet, but because of the sheer density of people. Families shouting, security yelling, suitcases crashing, children crying. The sound reverberates off the walls, growing louder, sharper, impossible to ignore. And sound is the one thing zombies never ignore. Airports are filled with narrow choke points, security lines, boarding gates, baggage claim corridors, stairwells. It only takes one infected traveler collapsing at the front of a crowd to unleash a chain reaction that rips through hundreds of people before anyone understands what's happening. By the time screaming spreads through the terminal, the exits are already clogged with bodies trying to push past each other. And the worst part is psychological. People believe airports mean rescue. They cling to the idea of planes lifting off, taking them somewhere untouched. But flights stop the moment the outbreak hits. Pilots don't wait. Air traffic control collapses. Runways shut down. So the crowds waiting for rescue aren't waiting for safety. They're waiting for nothing. Train stations collapse even faster. The underground platforms amplify noise like megaphones. Tunnels limit airflow, limit movement, limit escape. Once a horde enters a station, it spreads through the platforms like water through cracked stone, and every staircase becomes a funnel pushing survivors straight into the teeth of the infected. You don't find salvation in airports and train stations. You find panic condensed into walls, lights, and marble floors. And once the first scream echoes through those great halls, the entire building becomes a single giant trap with 1,000 people and only a handful of doors, none of which stay open for long. A shopping mall feels like a fortress at first glance. Thick walls, wide hallways, multiple floors, solid construction. But in a zombie takeover, that sense of security isn't just wrong, it's deadly. Because malls don't protect you. They trap you, turning every echo, every shadow, every open space into an opportunity for the dead to corner you without warning. When the outbreak begins, survivors rush to malls for the same reason they rush to supermarkets. Supplies, tools, food, clothing, gear, all in one place. But unlike a grocery store, a mall is enormous. That size becomes a maze the moment panic takes over. You step inside and immediately lose control of your surroundings. The sound of your footsteps bounces off glass storefronts and tiled floors. A single distant scream ricochets through the entire building, making it impossible to tell where it came from or how close the danger actually is. And malls have one fatal design flaw: too many entrances. Every door, every loading bay, every emergency exit becomes a silent invitation for zombies to wander in from multiple directions at once. You could be exploring one wing while a horde quietly pushes into another, cutting off your path back without you even realizing it. Then there's the vertical danger. Escalators and stairwells act like funnels. If a zombie appears at the bottom, everyone above is trapped. If it attacks from the top, there's nowhere to run but down. Open balconies create fall risks as terrified survivors push and scramble to escape. One wrong step, and the height that once gave you a vantage point becomes your executioner. But the worst trap of all lies in the architecture. Large, open atriums amplify sound. Zombies don't need to see you, they can follow your echoes. And once a horde gathers in the main hall, every store becomes a box, every corridor a dead end, every glass storefront a potential collapse waiting to happen. You don't get safe zones inside a mall, you get illusions of them. Beautiful, bright, fragile illusions that shatter the moment the infected arrive. And once they do, the entire mall turns into a massive echo chamber filled with footsteps that aren't always yours. Rooftops look like salvation during a zombie takeover. High above the ground, far from the streets, wide open skies, your instincts tell you that if you can just get up there, you'll finally be safe. But that feeling is a lie, and it's one of the deadliest illusions survivors fall for, because the higher you climb, the more you trap yourself without realizing it. The danger begins the moment you reach the top. You step onto the roof, close the access door behind you, and for a brief second, you feel victorious. The noise below becomes distant. The chaos feels far away. But that sense of peace blinds you to the reality. Rooftops offer zero resources. No water, no shelter, no cover, no escape routes. The sun burns you during the day, the cold drains you at night, and dehydration sets in faster than fear. And even worse, rooftops kill your mobility. You can go up, but you can't go anywhere else. If zombies reach the building, if survivors swarm the stairwells, or if fire breaks out below, you have only two options left: jump or die. The height gives you the illusion of control, but it removes every meaningful choice. You're stuck on a flat island surrounded by a sea of death. Then comes the most overlooked danger: other survivors. Panic makes people unpredictable. A group fleeing the infected might force their way up the stairs and onto your rooftop. They're desperate, frantic, irrational. They don't care how many supplies you have. They care that you're standing between them and the only safe place they can see. And in moments like that, people are far more dangerous than zombies. Finally, rooftops expose you. Zombies may not climb perfectly, but they follow noise, shadows, motion. A rooftop silhouette becomes a beacon. A single shout, a dropped object, or even just your footsteps can attract a growing horde that surrounds the building from all sides. You're not out of reach. You're on display. A rooftop feels like the highest point of safety. But in a zombie apocalypse, it's just the highest point of denial. Once you're up there, the only thing separating you from death is the hope that the world below doesn't reach your level. And hope is not a survival strategy. When cities collapse, when crowds turn violent, when every street feels like a trap, your mind starts craving isolation. And that's exactly why so many survivors flee to forest cabins and remote houses. A quiet wooden home far from civilization sounds like the perfect retreat. No zombies, no noise, no chaos, just silence and distance. But in a zombie takeover, that silence is not safety. It's a warning. And that distance becomes your biggest vulnerability. The moment you reach a remote cabin, you feel relief wash over you. No crowds, no sirens, no infected dragging themselves across pavement. But that calm blinds you to what you've actually done. You've cut yourself off from everything you might need to survive. Cabins offer comfort, not capability. No medical supplies beyond a dusty first aid kit. No backup power, no communication, no reinforcements. If you get injured, infected, or even just dehydrated, there's no one coming to help. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Then there's the forest itself. People imagine trees as a protective barrier, but forests hide more than they reveal. Every branch snap echoes unpredictably. Every shadow looks like movement. And zombies don't need to be fast in the woods. They only need to be quiet. A single infected wandering between the trees can get within arm's reach before you even realize something is wrong. Dense vegetation kills visibility, kills reaction time, kills your ability to predict where danger will emerge, and wildlife becomes another threat. Wolves, wild boars, snakes, creatures that don't understand the outbreak, only that their territory has changed. In isolation, you're not just surviving zombies. You're surviving nature too, and nature doesn't give warnings. But the deadliest part of all is psychological. Humans are social creatures. Isolation wears you down, drains your alertness, erodes your sense of time. The longer you stay alone in a remote cabin, the slower you react, the quieter your instincts become, the more you start believing the danger has passed, even when it hasn't. By the time you hear the first knock on the door, you won't know whether it's a survivor begging for help or a zombie that followed your scent through the trees. And in that moment of hesitation, the forest will remind you of the truth. Isolation doesn't protect you during a zombie takeover. It hides danger until you're too alone to fight it. You think going underground will save you. No zombies, no crowds, no gunfire, just darkness, silence, and thick concrete separating you from the chaos above. But underground spaces, subways, sewers, basements, service tunnels, don't protect you from the apocalypse. They concentrate it. They take every danger on the surface and compress it into tight corridors where you have no room, no vision, and no time to react. The moment you step below ground, you surrender your senses. Light fades. Sounds distort. A single footstep echoes like it's coming from every direction at once. You can't tell if something is 10 meters away or standing right behind you. Zombies don't need stealth underground. The architecture gives it to them. Their groans bounce across the walls, so you never know how many there are. One infected moving through a tunnel becomes a dozen in your imagination, and that uncertainty can paralyze you before the real danger even arrives. And tunnels don't stay empty. Survivors fleeing the streets run underground when they panic, turning these narrow passages into temporary shelters. But panic has a cost. All it takes is one terrified person carrying a hidden bite to turn the entire space into a slaughter zone. There are no alternate routes, no flanking paths, no open areas to maneuver. One infected blocks a hallway, and everyone behind them becomes trapped in a single file line of victims. Then there's the physical danger. Underground systems flood, pipes burst, fires suffocate oxygen, gas pockets ignite without warning. Every step you take is a gamble. One wrong turn and you're not fighting zombies. You're fighting the environment itself. And if a horde enters the tunnel behind you, there's nowhere to run. The same walls meant to protect you become your tomb. But the most chilling part is the illusion of quiet. Underground silence feels safe at first, calming even, until you realize it's not silence at all. It's concealment. Everything dangerous is still there. You just can't hear it properly, can't see it properly, can't predict it properly. Down here, darkness isn't just the absence of light, it's the absence of control. In a zombie takeover, going underground doesn't mean you're escaping danger. It means you're walking deeper into it, where every corridor is a dead end and every shadow is a mouth waiting to open. Bridges look safe from a distance. Open air, long views, nowhere for zombies to hide. But the moment you step onto one during a zombie takeover, you've already made a fatal mistake. Because bridges don't behave like normal terrain. They behave like traps. Long, narrow, elevated traps with 2 entry points and 0 escape routes. The danger starts with the crowd. In the first hours of the outbreak, terrified survivors swarm toward bridges, hoping to cross rivers, reach the countryside, or escape the city. But bridges aren't designed for thousands of panicked people moving in one direction at once. Foot traffic stacks, cars jam. Every meter you move becomes slower than the one before it. And once the flow of movement stops, the bridge turns into a solid mass of bodies packed shoulder to shoulder, with no room to turn around if something goes wrong. And something always goes wrong. One infected survivor hidden in the crowd collapses. One scream, one bite, one person trying to push past everyone else. In a space that narrow, chaos spreads faster than the infection itself. People shove, people fall, people get trampled. The bridge doesn't just trap you physically, it traps you psychologically. Panic becomes unavoidable, uncontrollable, unstoppable. Worse, zombies don't need strategy to take a bridge. They just need to appear on both ends. Once the infected gather at the entrance and exit, the entire structure becomes a deadly funnel. You're stuck in the middle with a horde closing in from both sides, and there's nowhere to run except toward the water or over the edge. Bridges offer elevation, but not safety. One moment of desperation can send dozens of survivors climbing the rails, slipping on metal, and plummeting into the river below. And the bridge itself becomes the final threat. Crashes, fires, or even just too many people can weaken the structure. A single truck blocking the way turns every lane into a gridlock death trap. One explosion or collapse creates a pileup that seals off the path forever. On a bridge, you don't get choices. You get one straight line and a countdown until something reaches you from the other side. And by the time you realize the danger, it's too late. The bridge you thought would carry you to safety becomes the place where thousands never make it across. You've avoided the hospitals. You've stayed clear of police stations, supermarkets, highways, airports, malls, rooftops, cabins, underground tunnels, and bridges. 10 places, 10 deadly traps that most people run toward without hesitation. And as the world collapses around you, a truth begins to form in the back of your mind. Survival isn't about choosing the right place. It's about refusing the wrong ones. But here's the twist. The most dangerous place of all isn't on that list. It isn't a building or a street or a structure collapsing under the weight of panic. The most dangerous place exists long before the outbreak begins, and it exists right now, inside you. It's the place where assumptions live, the place where old logic hides, the part of your mind that refuses to accept how quickly the world has changed. Because during a zombie takeover, the dead don't kill you first. Your certainty does. The belief that help is coming. The instinct that crowds will protect you. The hope that familiar locations will function the way they always have. These invisible traps claim far more lives than teeth or claws ever will. As the night settles and the screams fade into the distance, you finally understand what this new world demands. You must kill your old instincts before they kill you. Every decision you make now must come from awareness, not memory. From strategy, not fear. From clarity, not comfort. The apocalypse doesn't punish the weak, it punishes the predictable. You take a breath, gripping your pack tighter. The world is darker, quieter, colder. But for the first time, your mind is awake. You know what to avoid. You know what waits in the places people rush toward without thinking. And as the wind carries the distant growls of the horde through the empty streets, one final realization cuts deeper than everything else. You've survived this long because you stayed out of the 10 deadly places. But the next danger won't come from a location. It will come from a choice. And the wrong choice is already looking for you.